People say that Paul Adom-Otchere's journalism doesn't talk about corruption. Other people's journalism talks about corruption and saves the country money, and they don't talk about Zoom Lion and he's corrupt and all that.
Paul Adom-Otchere,
Ghana's longest-serving TV host and multiple award-winning journalist,
is widely known for his sharp, insightful, and fiery political editorials.
in his first-ever broadcast appearance,
He goes raw.
I will not say anything in defense of Akufo-Addo that's untrue.
You called him the most impactful politician. Manasseh writes, the president we never got. A direct opposite of what you stand for.
Because I knew that was going to be controversial, I evidenced it with Galamsey is not an issue that any president will be able to deal with. John Mahama became president before Donald Trump. Count how many press conferences Donald Trump has done since he became president. 102. President Mahama has not opened himself up to the press. Many young people do not see a connection between constitutional amendment and bread and butter. Neutrality about journalism is a fallacy. You cannot be a football fanatic and say that you are neither Kotoko or Hearts. I've spoken to Shatawale about it. I've spoken to Stoneboy about it, that we desperately need to get. I don't understand how this really straightforward solution is taking us 15 years. I don't know what Sam George is doing about it right now.
Have you registered it?
I was on the NCA board. Sky News have a helicopter. They fly with the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister knows that, hey, Sky News is here, be careful. But here the politicians, how many are they? How much are we going to give them? And I said,
Welcome to another edition of Talk No Dey Cook Rice podcast. As you know, it's a conversation where I say we're young, meaningful Ghanaians who have the records to show for. The ones who are not talking, but are cooking. And today's guest is one that I am personally very excited about. I mean, I'm a very young boy and very new in the field for that matter. And so I study him. There's a lot I'm picking from him. And it makes so much sense and it gives me so much joy when people I sincerely learn from make the time to be on this podcast. I don't want to do a lot of talking with introduction because I want to glean from his knowledge. I don't even want to waste any time on myself. I'm telling you about the host of the longest political talk show, Paul Adom-Otchere. Paul, welcome to Talk No Dey Cook Rice podcast.
Thank you very much. So it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Great. What's the difference with the glasses?
Well, there's something they call bifocal, and I'm not able to do it. You have to look lower to read and high to walk. And I'm not able to do it. So I have one that helps me to read and one that helps me to look.
Is it intentional about the colors being the same?
It's so that when I'm on production and I take photographs are taken, they will all show the same color of the glasses.
Wow, makes sense. That's some good branding. Paul, as I mentioned, I learned from you. I'm a very young boy. I mean, the audience know my age. I'm just 27 and recently transitioned from being a TV director to hosting this podcast and by God's grace, running it on Joy News. And when with the little time I followed you, of course, when I was young, I used to see you on Metro TV a lot. One of the things I've really admired and thought all this while is, who is Paul Adom-Otchere? I know you don't talk much about yourself. You are more about what you do. And, you are not here to just tell us about your family, whatever. But what do you think I need to basically understand about your background to fully grasp the venerable man who sits before me today?
Well, I grew up in Bema camp, and that meant a bit of discipline. My father was a soldier, and from Bema camp, I went to boarding secondary school in Presec. That sort of enhanced my ability to connect with people I didn't know when I was growing up. And it was an interesting journey over there. After that, I went to the university, again boarding, so I connected with a lot more people. I typically like to have fun, a lot of fun. My sense of fun is conversing, having a chat with people and laughing. That's really my source of fun. I talk a lot, and because I talk to a lot of people, I get to understand different things and different people. Some of my friends will tell me that as for Paul, he will always understand everyone. And that's really my hallmark. I like to look at things from other people's perspective. And in doing so, I was, when I got to university, one of my lecturers who was talking to us put this conversation about how we feel about ourselves and other people very bluntly when in discussing grades that students get. She reminded us that we will always say when we get a low grade that a lecturer gave me C. Yeah. But if you get an A, you say I got an A. You don't say the lecturer gave me A. But so that then firmed up my orientation about how to always look at things from another person's perspective. It helped my interviewing skills at the beginning because as a political journalist, politicians will always blame the other side. And I try to look at it from this one's perspective and that one's perspective. And I guess it helped me to interview well. So really, my orientation is to understand people from their perspective. I understand Muslim from their perspective. I understand Hindu from their perspective. I may not subscribe to it, but I try to understand why they think the way they think. So I do not, as a political reporter, set up to say, oh, these people are bad because they are coming from a certain history. And because of my love for history, I always look at the history of people. They're coming from a certain history. Certain people are coming from a certain background that makes them defensive. Some people are coming from a certain background that gives them a certain complex, either superiority or inferiority. It's important for us to, in living in the world, to understand people from wherever they come from. And that way we are able, fortunately with the help of God, to foster a better future for ourselves. So that's really my orientation, getting to understand people and understand why they do what they do.
Wow, that makes so much sense. And of course, it tells in how you're able, some people would only show up on your show because, I think years of friendship and the trust, as you mentioned, you're a very good conversationalist. Talk of history. I haven't read your entire book, but I've read commentaries on it. I've listened to almost every interview you've had about it. And of course, Ghana had run through a period of military rule. We're making a switch. We made a switch. And in your book, you list 77 stories that shaped our democracy, the Fourth Republic. And one of the people you really give a lot of credit to is Justice D.F. Annan. You talk about the fact that he, being a lawyer with a law background, he was an appeal court judge, coming in as a speaker, really solidified the importance of the court, especially when Rawlings had transitioned, was now the president. And so for the first time, we're going to get somebody who would either dance to his tune or, oppose him. And I think there was a time, one Pepra, I'm not too sure of his first name, you are the history guy.
Kwame
Pepra had to read the budgets. And the opposition felt that they should have been vetted. The opposition wrote to Justice D.F. Annan that he cannot proceed, when the tenets have not been fulfilled. Justice D.F. Annan then replies that, no, we are not going to agree for him to read. For the first time, we've seen a speaker stand against a president who used to be a dictator, not a dictator, a military ruler. How does that shape the narrative for today's courts? Because now, especially with all the happenings with the courts, the Chief Justice and all of that, give me some little background I need to know on that and how basically that having Justice D.F. Annan with a law background shaped our democracy.
I think it's regrettable to remember Justice D.F. Annan because it looks like we've lost quite a bit of that. We've lost, the politics has degenerated into my party is always right and their party is always wrong. And I regret that. That's why I put that in the book so that maybe those who read it will feel a sense of nostalgia about how Ghana's democracy used to be, as you say, under a post-military dictator. Justice Annan was a very important catalyst to getting this constitution working because he was there as speaker and he would agree with the minority in parliament at the time was like the minority today, maybe just +1 -1, because the NDC at that time controlled about 2/3 of the parliament. And Justice Annan was the speaker. Justice Annan had been an important person within the PNDC as well. Some people also say because Justice Annan came from an MPP background, not the MPP itself, but the parties that begat the MPP was a party that he was a member of. And the way he managed the parliament, and as a reporter, that's the first parliament I covered, the way he managed the parliament then, it helped us significantly. I think we've lost that. Justice Annan was the guy who, when you referred laws to him or procedures to him, he always made fidelity to the law and to the procedure. It was even difficult to tell that he was an NDC member. And that really helped because the minority was so small that they could have been overrun. Justice Annan got the NDC to get what they wanted, but he wanted them to get it through the right procedure. So in this issue of vetting, they got what they wanted. They had their ministers accepted as ministers, not through the regular process. But Justice Annan insisted that once a person has not been vetted, however you call vetting, he cannot proceed to speak to Parliament. And that helped. And throughout his ruling, and so in the year 2000, I had a soft spot for Justice Annan continuing as Speaker, but we had a Speaker who was actually even better. Adjete came in and also decided to reduce the powers of the executive over the legislature, and he was brilliant. It's spoken about in my book that it was as a result of Adjete's conduct that the president decided not to retain him when the president won a second term, because Adjete was overbearing in his insistence that Parliament must be an independent institution. Adjete it was who raised the budget for Parliament to this level where Parliament can have its own money and to work with it by itself. Aban Bagbin has done a bit of that, but Adjete helped the situation. After Adjete, I'm not so sure whether we continued in that regard. And then we sort of had other speakers who were more partisan than they ought to be. And that sort of affected the independence of Parliament. But by the time we had election 2008 and 2012, our politics had degenerated into my party's rights all the time. The results of election 2024 gives us a certain glimmer of hope that people are willing to vote according to their circumstance more than party. And people are willing to abstain from the votes. The 2024's election was the biggest record of abstinence that we had in the Fourth Republic. And I'm preparing a book on that as well. People were prepared to abstain from the votes if they were unhappy with something that was happening in their own party. So I think 2024 gives us a completely different shape of events and sort of restores the understanding about the deliverables of democracy. By 2024, people had come to the point of what is the democracy delivering? It brings us a bit of a danger, because if people think democracy is not delivering what it should deliver, they might opt for other options. And I was very disappointed with the excitement about Ibrahim Traore at the Independence Square on inauguration day. I was there and I was completely disappointed, because that is not the way to go. No matter how you look at it, that cannot be a way to go. Military coup d'etat can never be a way to go. You can have it only in extreme circumstances where the government has said that there will be no elections, for instance. You are heading towards election 2024. The government says that we have cancelled the elections, we have postponed the elections and stuff like that. When the government is beginning to tinker with the way in which people can express their rights against the government, demonstrations are not allowed, free speech is banned, one-party state is being foisted on the people. In those circumstances, you may have a military coup. Given the whole international situation at this time, it's really difficult for any government to do that. So military coup is not the way to go. But what election 2024 brought out was people were beginning to ask questions about what is the democracy delivering for us? If the democracy is not delivering cheaper prices at the retail shops, it's not delivering cheaper prices at the markets, democracy is not making people feel safe, and you say you're in a democracy and somebody grants an interview and after that police arrest him and all of that, you call all of that democracy, then you're going to have the young people say that we don't want this democracy. That's very, very important. So I guess that we really have to look at what the democracy is delivering. And that's what election 2024 taught us. Again, looking at the post-election 2024, the first 6 months of the new administration, again, I'm going to record this in a book, that this is the first time in Ghana that we have had conversations about the next election so early, so brutally early. We never had that before. And all the elections I've covered after 2008, nobody was thinking about election 2012. After 2012, we started thinking about election 2016 and 2014. By the time political parties are coming around to their midterm election, changing their national leadership, that's the time people start thinking about it. But here we are, just 2 months after the election, everyone is focused on election 2028. That may be also because we have a very peculiar situation of a government that wins a massive majority in the election, but has only one term.
Yeah.
And it always creates a problem. Now, I've been saying to people as we're researching for the next book that people say Ghana votes 8 years. That may be true on the record. The reason why that has been happening is not just because Ghanaians want to change a political party in 8 years. That has been happening also because after 8 years, the ruling government needs to change the leader. And when governments are changing the leader within a 4-year span, somehow political parties all over the world are not able to foster the unity that they need in government to win the next election. That's why you will see in the political democracies that they have a prime ministerial system. You have prime ministers going 3 terms and 4 terms, but in the 2-term limit, you don't have them doing that very often. In America, the last time that happened was in 1988 when George Bush Sr. won a 3rd term for the Republican Party after Ronald Reagan's 2 years. That's the last time it happened. The reason why it is like that is because when you're running a 2-term administration and the president is running, the president runs the elections not just for the political party, but he runs the elections with the state. Now, there's a difference between the state and the government. So the police is state, military is state, civil servants are state. The government is the ministers, the deputy ministers, DCEs, and government appointees. When a president is on the ballot, he's running with the state. Because if a person is the police commander for the station master for the Kokomlemle police station, as during the term of the president, he knows that his boss, who is at the headquarters, will be maintained if the president were to cross over to win a 2nd term. When the president wins a 2nd term, everything is maintained. So the commander of the armed forces will be maintained. The commander of the police most likely will be maintained. Judges will be comfortable. Everyone who is in the state runs with the government. Yeah. So it's very difficult for that person to lose an election. And so it's not because that parties do well in the 1st term, that's why they don't get changed. No, it is because the government, and we got it out of research, the government is running with the state for the 2nd term. So the question then is, if Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, and that's where we are on the research, had run in the election 2000, could he have won? Our difficult answer is yes, he may have won.
Really?
Because he'll be running with the state. And then you ask the question, if Nana Akufo-Addo had run 2024 elections, could he have won? I dare to say he could have won because he'll be running with the state. He'll be running with the IGP, running with the military. He's running with civil servants. He's running with everybody finds themselves on the ballot. State people who are not supposed to be on the ballot will feel themselves on the ballot. And that's why the president crosses over. That's what explained election 2020, where you had such a massive dissipation of the MPP's majority. But the president won a whooping 500,000 because he was running with the states. So when the president is not running, the state doesn't participate on the side of the government. Yeah. In fact, some of the state actors find themselves talking to the opposition. And we had rumors of that. People were going to John Mahama's house, who are important state actors. They were going to assure him of their support, assure him of this, assure him of that, because they knew that the president is not running. And often, the opposition selects their candidate first. So he's the first to be on the ballot. Yeah. The MPP are trying to do that now. They want to select a candidate in January next year. If that candidate gets selected, he will be on the ballot. He's already on the ballot. The government party must wait till 2027 to have their person on the ballot. So businessmen, state actors, other politicians, they already know that person X is on the ballot. He's on the ballot for sure. If you cut a deal with him and you like it, you're going to support him. You're not going to wait till 2027 to see who comes on the ballot for this one. So people were talking to John Mahama, who was already on the ballot. They didn't know whether it was going to be Alan Shamati or it was going to be Mahamadou Bawumia or it was going to be Kennedy Japan. They don't waste their time with that. They go to John Mahama and say, Chief, if you become president, would you be able to achieve this and that? If they get the confidence from him that he will be able to achieve the things that they want, they will align with him. Okay. And that's why we have this two-term thing. And if it continues, it's going to be very difficult for a government to win a 3rd term. So people think that in Ghana is 8 years. It is not the case. Well, 2028 is going to be a major test for us to see that where you have a president who comes in a 1st term and is running 1 term. So he's in a 1st term like he's in a 2nd term. And I had a long conversation with someone last night who was telling me that a strong advice is going to the NDC that if the MPP were to select their candidates in January as they want to do, the NDC should select their candidates in December 2026. Because if they're going to wait for December 2027, whoever the MPP selects might have gone ahead. And you go ahead to engage with stakeholders, engage with media, engage with that. So you will see that most of the 3rd term bids for the parties, the entire media swing to the opposition. It happened in 2000, it happened in 2008, it happened in 2024. By 2000, almost all the media had swung to John Agyekum Kufuor, who had been on the ballot since 1998. People were not sure whether Professor Mills will be on the ballot, or whether it will be Guzitano, or whether it will be that or it will be that. As a result of that, and we record it in the book, the NDC intelligence people got J.J. Rawlings to announce Mills way ahead so that it will help people to sort of align with it. But it didn't quite help. In 2008, Professor Mills had been on the ballot way ahead in 2006. Then Akufo-Addo was in a big quarrel with Alanche Martin. People didn't know how that was going to go. So that's really what happens. If we want to have longer governments, we may have to have a change of our constitution. I've been supporting that. I mean, one of the guys that I've had many intellectual quarrels with is Oliver Vomaho, but he's my best friend when it comes to constitutional amendments because we all agree on constitutional amendments. And we both think that we need a parliamentary system which gives us more accountability. When I appeared before the Constitution Review Commission of Professor Mills, that was way back sometime in 2011 or so, I made the point that the kind of democracy we are running, it reduces the accountability of government. If we were to run the parliamentary system which the British ran, it increases the accountability of government. And I gave examples then, and those examples are alive today. If we were running a British parliamentary system and President Mahama was in parliament every day, or forget about President Mahama, let's go to Nana Akufo-Addo. If we run a system with Nana Akufo-Addo as prime minister, the questions that we have not been able to ask him, because the democracy that we run does not allow us to ask him, he would have had to answer it in parliament. National Cathedral. Nobody has ever heard Akufo-Addo talk about National Cathedral. 58 million, was it 48 million, was it 100? Nobody hears about it because the democracy doesn't allow you to ask him. But if you have a more accountable system like the British parliamentary system, it comes to parliament, there's a question for the prime minister, how much have you spent on the National Cathedral? He would have to answer it. There were rumors that his daughter had a restaurant somewhere. Yeah. Nobody heard anything about him. It would have been easy for a more accountable political system to extract that information from him in the prime ministerial system. Look, for instance, at America. And we say that our system is modeled after America. America has spent a lot of years building strong institutions. John Mahama became president before Donald Trump. Count how many press conferences Donald Trump has done since he became president. We counted 102 since Donald Trump became, because that's the culture of America. Every time he's talking to the press, he's in the plane, he comes out and says, okay, what do you want to know? And they ask him, there's no question that Donald Trump has not answered. Why are you in Israel? Why are you supporting Ukraine? He has done 100 press conferences since he became president on 22nd January. John Mahama became president on 7th January. He's not done one press conference. So you can't ask him anything. Whether the boxing match was sponsored by state, you can't ask him. Whether this or that, you can't ask him. What happened in Ablekuma, you can't ask him. Because we don't have that system. And that's why Oliver and I think that for this democracy to be sustained, we really need to change the system and go to a more accountable system. It will help the youth, it will help the country. And our argument is made stronger if you look at the fact that we used to have that political system. And then once upon a time, a president decided to change it in 1960 because he was concerned that it was worrisome to him. We need a system that worries the president because he holds the purse of the republic. So we need a system that really troubles him so that he can do the right thing. But if you have a system where a president can decide that in 4 years, I will not talk to nobody, he can do that. And he will be okay to do that within the framework of the constitution that we have. He'll go to parliament once a while to give a sessional address. It's a monologue. Nobody asks him any questions. He will choose whether he wants to do press conferences. So when President Kufuor became president, and it happens to all of them, at the beginning of his presidency, he wants to be a democratic president. He organizes a press conference. 1, 2, finished. They don't do it anymore. President Kufuor, 2, finished. Mills, 2, finished. Akufo-Addo, 2, finished. John Mahama, first time, 2, finished. Because they realized that this is a Waterloo. I will not do it anymore. So 3 months into the government, Akufo-Addo did a press conference. And that's when, if you remember, he was asked about something about football. And he said, he's forgotten. He never even thought about it. And people were laughing about it and all that. But he didn't continue because the matters became more important and were touching his skin. So if the system is not compelling him to do a press conference, he's not going to do any press conference. 6 months down the line, President Mahama has not opened himself up to the press to ask him questions. He may not do it forever. So the political system really needs to be looked at in a very critical way to sustain our democracy. And because of the kind of country that we have, we really need a system. It may not be the British parliamentary system, but whatever system we have, it must bring out accountability of leadership. in a very big way. Otherwise, we don't know where we're going.
My name is Derek Elom-Ashilevi, and I just started this podcast journey about 6 months ago. By God's grace, we launched it, and from the first episode to now, we seem to be doing well. We are doing well. I mean, I just want to be humble, you see. It's the conversation where I sit down and talk to young people who are doing impressive, especially in a place like Ghana. And we've been cooking some rice for some time now, but we need help. It takes a lot to get you an episode. I'm sure a lot of you believe that our platform is doing some good to you. And so we're calling sponsors. If you want to sponsor Talk No The Cook Rice podcast, we are very open to it. Any form of sponsorship at all. You can give us sneakers. We give you a shout out. Of course, I wear your sneaker. I can't do on TV top video, but free adverts. If you want squeeze back is the L thing where this video will squeeze and you see your adverts playing as it's doing now. Even if it's phone case you think you can use to support the show in any way you can, let's cook this rice together. There are some brands I personally want to be on the show. A brand like MTN. MTN, you are asking, what are people doing today? Hey, my show really aligns with what you're doing because I'm asking people to stop talking and to cook. Hence the name, Talk No The Cook Rice. MTN, you can hop on. We're going to be very grateful. If you're a brand that you are into food, we're open to it. Drinks, children, whatever. Charlie, we need help and we want you to come on this show so we both shoot up and fly together. And so if you'd love to sponsor or be a part of the Talk No The Cook Rice journey for what we're doing, the numbers are on the screen. You see for yourself. You can email the account you see or just DM. Charlie, no sweat. Just DM. Text me. That's my number. We'll have a conversation about what we can do to make the show better, the experience, a more exciting one for our viewers. I'm so excited that you want to go on this journey with me. This is Talk No The Cook Rice podcast. As you know it, yeah, we cook rice. Don't talk about plans. Charlie, cook. Paul, I like your brain. I like how you're able to tell the chronology of events and how I think you make in fact, I've not even thought about it, that all throughout Akufo-Addo's, I never saw him. I mean, in the early years, he did the press
One or two.
Yeah, you know. So it makes sense to hold that. But isn't then this a limping democracy? And that's why our neighboring countries feel that, no, we've tried it, it's not working. And sometimes you hear the young people speak and the youth, and they get very angry about the fact that some people believe that we should shift from this democratic system and get a firm and a stern leader. You know, things that people make the joke that perhaps if Rawlings were here, or just like how Kagame has done for Uganda, even in a democracy, so somebody who has a military background could be a better alternative to shape, especially when we are sandwiched by countries who now don't believe in democracy. Is democracy still something we should really consider? Or perhaps,
I think we should. And the point you make is another research that we are doing. It looks like the many Ghanaian youth in looking at election 2028, we just started a research. And it looks like many youth are asking for what they call a whip cracker. And that's really what you're saying. They want the next president of Ghana to be one that they have confidence in, that he can crack the whip. So I've been telling political parties as we're looking at the research that, look, the next election is not about parties anymore. It's about individual. People are going to gravitate towards an individual who they believe that this guy can crack the whip. What is crack the whip? Crack the whip is a minister is misbehaving, you sack him. They have been yearning for that for a long time. They don't get that. They didn't expect that of John Mahama. John Mahama was expected to come and sack the old regime and create an enabling environment. The next leader after John Mahama is somebody that they want who can crack the whip, whether it's NDC or it's MPP. The real quality they are looking for in the next leader is this man is a whip cracker, and they're looking at it from his history, what he's done, how he does it, how he talks, his level of honesty, sincerity. That's really what people are looking for from the research that we are finding out. So it's true that people are looking for a militarized type of leader, and that's what the young people are looking for. It's important for the political parties to look into themselves and bring out that candidate. Whoever brings out that candidate is most likely to win the next election. It's not about political party. It's about the personality that they put on the ballot. If they get a certain kind of person that people believe can crack the whip, the young people will vote for that person. So we have to wait and see what happens. My only fear is that if the young people vote for that person and he's not able to deliver, then the hope in democracy will be lost. So it is important that whoever is elected on the altar of you are a whip cracker, whenever he becomes president, must abide by that and be able to crack the whip. Ghanaians think that a minister misbehaves, you can sack him. Your people misbehave, you are defending them. Somebody says something and you don't crack the whip on your people. And so it becomes a problem. And it's already started festering over the last 6 months that people are thinking that, this guy should have been sacked. And nothing happens. And so you always get a paper from the Jubilee House explaining why this happened or that happened. And people don't really like that. So yes, the next leader of Ghana, from the research we are finding out, people are not thinking about colors. They're not thinking about parties. They're looking for that personality. It also suggests that perhaps an independent candidate with significant funding is getting close to winning Ghana's election. If 2028 is not able to deliver that whip cracker in a good way, the next opportunity in 2032, the young people may move towards an independent candidate who promises that I'll deal with it. And they might think that an independent candidate is better qualified to run the country because he doesn't have people, doesn't have a party that he has to obey and all of that. So it's all up in the air and we're looking at it.
2019, you had a conversation with His Eminence, the Archbishop. And I mean, you were engaging him on other matters and you asked him about the current politics we're playing in Ghana. And he made the argument that he thinks we shouldn't run elections in Ghana. Let's get the political party, civil society, everybody together and set what he calls the national agenda. And for 25 years, we don't have an election. What we do every 5 years is to change the leader. So maybe we pick NPP. You are leading for the next 5 years. We don't hold elections. The next 5 year, an NDC leader takes over, I don't know. Also exploring the bits about if the whip cracking, whatever, leader does not sort of work out, is that an alternative we can consider? And especially because I don't know, oftentimes I'm already scared of 2028 elections, especially with the violence we just saw happen over the weekend. And it's almost as if the next government would almost stage a rebuttal, so it makes it somewhat unsure. I am a younger guy. I'm now witnessing some of these things. Well, what do you make of His Eminence's idea of setting a national agenda when everybody comes and just toes in that pattern?
It's a good idea, but how we're going to get it is complicated because politics has now permeated every part of the society and everyone is political. And I get very disappointed when governments change, even though it happens in the Western world, it's not as pronounced as we see here sometimes. When governments change and then important private banks are changing their managing directors to fit the new government, I get very disappointed when I see
really? That's a thing?
You should check.
I don't know.
Check 2009, check 2017, January. You will see, and you should check this year. You will see that important banks, private banks, big global banks, you will see on Joy Online, MD has changed. They are changing MDs to fit the new finance minister, to fit the new governor of the Bank of Ghana. So if you are a high-profile corporate person in the bank and you are number 2, number 3, and it turns out that the new governor, you become the MD. And that's terrible. In the law society, you'll see law firms shoot up according to the government in power. So this government in power, this particular law firm is doing all the work. The government in power goes away, another law firm comes and is doing all the work. It's very dangerous. You look at private hospitals. Some thrive when there's a certain government in power, and they go down when the government is not in power. Another one thrives when there's a certain government in power. I'm excited that the company in the accounting field, you have PwC sort of cutting across all governments. That's exciting. But that's not happening everywhere. And PwC itself, you see, they are changing their leadership when things happen like that. So the politics has so severely permeated the society that people try to align. Even civil society, you see that when some governments are in power, some civil societies are quiet. And another government is in power, they are louder. And people complain about it. So the politics is permeating the society because it's about reward. It's about financial reward. It's about money. And so, my major disappointment about what can keep the politics is to keep the media very wealthy. And that we have not been able to do. It is for that reason that I lobbied in 2017 to be on the board of the National Communication Authority so that we could do a digital migration in a way that will make the media wealthy. I have talked about it. We screamed about it. I've spoken to Shatawale about it. I've spoken to Stoneboy about it, that we desperately need to get digital migration. What is digital migration? Digital migration is a situation that the government has already started. Get everyone watching television in Ghana through a decoder. And in that decoder, there are free channels and there are paid up channels. So Joy FM on the decoder may be free on Joy News, but Joy Prime you pay. How do you pay? You pay through your mobile phone and you pay 5 cedis a month to watch Joy Prime. So that Joy Prime has its independent source of money and can resource its journalists very, very well and therefore guarantee their independence of thought. And that is the way the society can be saved. Elsewhere in America and UK, media houses are wealthy because people pay to see it. So if I do Good Evening Ghana and 100,000 people watch Good Evening Ghana on Tuesday night, and each of them paid 1 cedi to watch Good Evening Ghana, at the end of Tuesday night, we have 100,000 cedis. At the end of Thursday, we have another 100,000. 200,000 cedis a week allows me to employ a top lawyer, allows me to employ a high-profile economist. As a journalist, not as an economist coming on the show, as a journalist, as a news reporter, an economist that will be working at Barclays Bank and earning 25,000 cedis, I can pay him. Metro TV can pay him because Good Evening Ghana is generating that amount of money. Currently, Good Evening Ghana may attract 100,000 viewers, but you get zero for it. And you have to rely on advertising. You have to go and knock on somebody's doors. I don't know how difficult it is for the Ministry of Communication to implement this. When you go to London, you don't watch anything for free. You pay to watch. So that, and I spoke to President Mahama about this in 2015 when he was still president. One Sunday, I rushed to his house. I had access then. And I told him that, look, Mr. President, this digital migration, if we watch it, you will continue to send money to the Black Stars by plane. Because if you want money for the Black Stars, all you do is to stage a Ghana-Nigeria game at the Accra Sports Stadium, 5 cedis to watch in your home. You would have 1 million people watching for 5 cedis. You have 5 million cedis. And you don't need to find money for the Black Stars. Shatawale, if you are broke, go to the studio, build yourself for the next concert's 3 months' time at the Accra Sports Stadium. Stadium is filled for 40,000. We who are at home who want to watch the concert, properly filmed with about 72 cameras, we are going to pay 5 cedis to watch you. You have money. You will never be broke. I don't understand how this really straightforward solution is taking us 15 years. I don't know what Sam George is doing about it right now.
Have you registered it?
I was on the NCA board. We spoke about it. And at the NCA board, we achieved something. Kweku Sechado's board achieved something that's okay. We are now going to have a single decoder. At that time, they were talking about have 3-5 decoders in your house, one for Joy FM, one for Metro TV. I said, oh no, that's too complicated. So we agreed on having one single decoder so that everything is on it. So Metro TV is free on the decoder, but Good Evening Ghana is to be paid for. So when you are watching Metro TV, the free one, and it's time for Good Evening Ghana, the announcement will say that we are now switching on Good Evening Ghana. Those of you who have paid, you can watch it on channel 266. Those who have not paid, continue to watch Metro on this one. It's not by force. You don't have to pay. And so we also will have an obligation as producers to build a high quality program that people want to watch. So if you, for instance, you want to do an interview and the big story today is Hawa Kumsin. Yes, everyone wants to interview Hawa Kumsin. Any interview of Hawa Kumsin is a gold mine. Yeah. So you call Hawa Kumsin and say, Hawa, I will pay you 300,000 cedis for the interview. Because you know that if you put Hawa Kumsin interview and say 5 cedis, everyone will watch. That is what the media can do. But you see, the politicians don't like that. And I don't know why people have not seen it. It is the politicians who don't like that. Because you empower the media, they are in trouble. Because politicians must have a media that is broke. So they can pay them 5,000 to ask a question and they can pay them 2,000 to remove something and pay them 500 to put a headline. But if the media is not broke, are you going to pay Sky News 2,000 to? I was in London. I worked for the BBC in 2001 covering elections. And in the newsroom, they said the Prime Minister is going to Birmingham. How are we going? And I thought, we'll go with the Prime Minister. They said, no, we don't go with Prime Minister. We take our own car. We don't do that. We should sit in Prime Minister's car. And I was looking at them like that. This is 2001.
Wow.
And I said, this is so Paul, you're going to Birmingham. Say, yeah, this is your ticket. Go, don't, you know. And when I finished the Prime Minister's press conference, I don't think about how much are they going to give us and I'm going to write my name somewhere. It's not part of the conversation. I finish, I'm gone. And that's about it. Sky News have a helicopter. They fly with the Prime Minister to this branded Sky News because you are paying to watch them. So the Prime Minister knows that Sky News is here, be careful. But here the politicians, how many are they? They are 15. How much are we going to give them? Give Joy FM more. And then give City and then Peace. Peace is very important. Give them more. So which is the other one? X Station. but how many police? Okay, it doesn't matter. Give them 500. So the PRO, that's how we call them. The PRO of the ministry is very important. And say, journalists, please wait for me when I finish. We should cut. That is what is killing our democracy.
Oh.
Because if I'm a journalist and I feel I have quality, but my salary is so bad, and I align with a government and they come to power, I will take a job with the government because I want a Prado. Everyone wants a Prado. Once you've done journalism for 15 years, you think you've paid your dues. You want a Prado. How is Joy FM going to give Prado to all the journalists who are 15 years old? Because Joy FM is knocking on doors of Guinness and these people are looking for advertising. And now there's social media, which pays a little bit, but it's still paltry. The number of people who are listening to the Super Morning Show or other programs on Joy or on City, they pay zero. Why? Why do you pay to watch Netflix and you pay nothing to watch Joy FM? It is something that the youth must be angry about. The government must instantly achieve this. And for the youth who don't have jobs, they can create content. And you go to NCA and ask for the channel in that arrangement. You go NCA, can you give me channel 250? I have a dance with Chatawale at the beach. I want people to pay to watch. I said, okay, how much will you pay? You pay the base. You call Shatta and say, look, I think we can do this together. And all the different podcasts that young people do, they can create a channel for it. And you pay 1 CD to be on the channel, 1 CD a month to be on the channel. And at the end of the day, they probably will make 2 million CDs and they call the podcasters and share it for them. If you have, as a podcaster, 60,000 CDs from your podcast, you are independent. So now when the government is coming for press conference, they are afraid because no journalist there is going to take your 2,000, 5,000 and ask a certain question or don't ask a question. Or when you finish, you call the online person and say, this thing that I said there, please take it out because my boss says I didn't speak well. So Joy FM, take it out. It is impossible to ask BBC to change something on their online. Yeah. It is absolutely impossible. Something you've said, and they put it on BBC online. Then you call them and say, change it. They won't mind you. You can go to court if you want. They will tell you that our lawyers looked at it and they think it's okay. But you can call Joy FM and say, oh, Charlie, that thing, there's some way, so please remove the headline there. Or you call, oh, Charlie, but you put the headline you did was wrong. And Joy thinks, why is the headline wrong? That's what he said. Then your boss comes and says, Charlie, the minister says the headline is wrong. Let's change it. And you have to change it. Why? Because it's money. At the end of the day, it's money. These are some of the truths that people don't share. And that's why we get into trouble, those of us who speak this kind of language.
I'm happy. There's a shocking statistic I want to draw your attention to. The data shows us that about 80% of those of you here who come to consume the rice we cook here have not subscribed to the channel. I promise you, the team and I are going to work hard to bring you conversations that change the narrative. And that's why we're bringing you diverse conversations from entrepreneurs to footballers to journalists to creatives. We're going to bring you a lot more. But the caveat is that the bigger the subscription, the bigger the guest. There are some guests that we are trying to reach out. The only reason they are not minding us is because we don't have the numbers. And to help us do more by subscribing to this wherever you consume it, especially on YouTube. This is Talk, Not the Cook Rice podcast. As you know it, yeah, we cook rice. Don't talk about plans. Charlie, cook. You want to adjust your microphone up a bit? Okay. Yeah. I'm super happy to get these thoughts from you. It makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. Because when we become a lot more independent, then, of course, the president will be scared to show up for a press conference.
He should be. Yeah. And that's where democracy works. If the people who are the key actors in the government are not worried about media, we are doomed.
Wow.
Or they are worried about only one media, two media, we are doomed.
Great. Well, of course. And I had your definition for what you call news. News is basically events, people, places. That's your definition. And I think I like it. It makes so much sense. Covering an event with people and a certain time factor to it. And of course, we can't talk about news without talking about the believability quotient or the credibility quotient, where a media house will be held a lot more responsible for putting out a certain content. I mean, if Joy FM publishes Paul Adom-Otchere is a fraud, and maybe a blogger just publishes Paul Adom-Otchere is a fraud, Paul can take Joy FM to court and get a very good, compensation because people believe Joy FM as compared to, and so, of course, we all know the media is the fourth estate of the government. We are in a certain democracy where we are not used to the type of media where a place like America, you can have CNN against Trump agenda or be for the Republicans and maybe have Fox or the New York Times supporting Democrats. You are doing something different. I don't necessarily flow with the majority. If everybody's reporting that in Team Fojo, did this, Ntim Fordjo did this, you believe that, well, the majority may not necessarily be right. Let me have Ntim Fordjo on my show and actually have the conversation, ask him the questions nobody has asked him. In the case of Hawa Kumsim, for instance, every other person would come from the point of, well, she deserves it. She had done something to a Nima boy, took somebody's life. The tax had every single right. But Paul feels that, no, that necessarily does not make Hawa Kumsim a bad person. Basically, the question is, I think what you're doing is a lot more different. And I know somebody who is copying you, I don't know, every single thing you're doing. Kwadwo Sheldon, I've had him here on the podcast. He's a big admirer of you. And that's what he is.
I have an interview planned with him soon.
Oh, great. Solid. And Kwadwo is like, I believe in the national agenda. I will hold whoever is in the seat accountable. I'll bring the heat, But if I support the MPP, why shouldn't I be allowed, to, it's sort of as if we've painted everybody trying to be neutral, where in essence, he believes that nobody is neutral. What do you make of that and, how you run the show?
I think neutrality about journalism is a fallacy.
Really?
It's a total fallacy. When I was much younger, I looked at sports reporters. And one important sports reporter told me that, look, you cannot be a good sports reporter unless you are a fanatic of the sport. You cannot be a good football reporter unless you're a football fanatic. You cannot be a football fanatic and say that you are neither Kotoko or Hearts. I worked for Asante Kotoko in 2002 to 2005 at the communications desk. And then I found out that all the other executives of the other clubs, the smaller clubs, they were either Kotoko or Hearts. So we have RTU Kotoko, RTU Hearts. So when Kotoko was going to play RTU, I'll be told that, look, contact our people in RTU and see. I said, do we have people there? They said, oh, Alaji this, Alaji that. There are people. These people, they are Hearts. But they're RTU. So there's RTU Hearts, RTU Kotoko. There's Olympics Kotoko and Olympics Hearts. There's second 11 wise Kotoko and second 11 wise Hearts. So to be a great sports reporter, you're either Real Madrid or Barcelona. You cannot be neither. The responsibility you have as a journalist is to be impartial and to make fidelity to truth. So if I defend Akufo-Addo, which I did, and which I had started doing in 1998, and when I covered Parliament, and I tell you, and I told them, every parliamentary reporter has identified a politician in that chamber that he thinks will be good for Ghana. They may not say it, but that is the raw truth. If you cover Parliament and you watch all of them, you think that, the day Haruna Idrisu decides to contest for prayer, I'll support him. And that's how I supported Akufo-Addo. I watched him in Parliament and I said, wow, this guy, whenever he decides to be president, I think he will be a good president. He's such a huge name. He comes to Parliament first. 8 o'clock, he's there. He's sitting down writing. Then I go to him. I said, Nana Akufo-Addo, you're here. I said, yeah, we have some important meetings today. If the Parliament is 5, Nana Akufo-Addo is there. And his zeal about the things he did. So I started supporting him when he was a member of Parliament. So in 1998, when he ran for presidential, I was in Legon. I mobilized my friends from Commonwealth Hall to go to Sunyani to go and support him. He didn't win. We came back still chanting Nana Akufo-Addo's praises. In 1999, he comes to Commonwealth and the whole hall is gone agog. And the hall is so small to host him that we sent him to Central Cafeteria for those who know University of Ghana. Yeah. And I supported him at that time. In 2007, it was very easy to support Alan Kyerematen because the government of the day was supporting him. But I still supported him. But I will not say anything in defense of Akufo-Addo that's untrue. People may not agree with it, but whatever facts that I depose to has to be true. If there's nothing to say, I say nothing. If there's something to say against him, I say it to him. Mr. President, this one there, you got it wrong. Oh. So really, I say, yeah, this was terrible. The answer you gave was just too bad. But I won't say it publicly, and I said that before, and I got text messages from important NDC people who said that, but you say you won't criticize Akufo-Addo publicly, but you are criticizing our government publicly, even though you also have the same access to our leader, and why do you do that, etc., etc. So yes, basically, a journalist can stand where he wants to stand. Every journalist has in his mind where he stands. It may change because journalists are covering something. So he may get disappointed by the NPP that he thought was good. That can happen all the time. And he will switch. That's allowed. I mean, I can switch from Nana Akufo-Addo one day to Spio Gabra another time because I will say that, oh, I thought I knew Akufo-Addo well, but this thing that he did was terrible. That's really how journalists are because they are always observing and watching it, you know. Unlike football journalists who really cannot switch from Real Madrid because the passion is there. Yeah. The political support it can be passionate, but the passion runs on the back of observations that you have made. So you can get disappointed and decide that I don't want to support this guy anymore. I mean, I was a fan of Rawlings before. And I've said it before in 2000 when he was going to vote. That still never happened. I'm happy I still have the record. I was with him into the ballot. I have the videos there. I've showed you before. I walked with him right till when he put his ballot in. He allowed that because I was his friend. Because I was excited about him because I grew up in Burma camp. So Rawlings was my kind of hero. But as I got to read and understand the things that happened, I started having arguments with him when he was in opposition in 2003. I had easy access to Rawlings at Rage. I'll just call Tony Edu and say, he's the old man there, I want to come and see him. And I'll go and say, I have photographs of me sitting with Rawlings and Tony Edu chatting. He will allow me to bring a photographer. But I started having a lot of arguments with him. Victor Smith knows about this. And he would tell me, when you come to the old man, you ask him too many questions. And it is at that stage that I felt that, maybe I have believed something that I shouldn't have. In the end, the relationship got so bad that he had to publicly address me in a way that was unkind. But that's okay. But that is how journalists are. I supported Rawlings. I loved him. But I looked at certain things and I said, I don't think this is the way to go. So yes, journalists can shift from one political party to the other, from one political personality to the other based on observations. But any journalist who says I'm neutral, I'm not sure it's true because our culture does not allow people to come out. However, there's policy. Multimedia can hold a policy that we don't support government because for a democracy to thrive, we think the opposition needs the media. That's a policy. That's correct. You can have that policy. CNN's policy is we are set up by Democrats and we support Democrats. And so our reporters must have that orientation that they are Democrats. So they're interviewing you for a job, a top presenter job at CNN. You better be Democrat. You're a Republican, you can't fit in. Fox is the opposite. They do that. So yeah, that's allowed. But you can still have a media house that says that I will never support opposition or I will never support government because, so you are in the opposition, you're my friend. You come to government, you're not my friend. I get the sense multimedia pushes that kind of agenda, which is perfect because they are trying to fill a space in the democracy. They are looking at it and thinking that if we support government, then the democracy will die. So let us use our resources to support opposition so that the opposition voices can be heard. And that's always very important in a democracy for the opposition voices to be heard. It's very, very important. Otherwise, the democracy collapses. So yes, to answer your question broadly, policy can say support government or support opposition. But individual journalists, it's difficult to say that you don't support either side. Now, that brings me to another matter that people say that we don't, my Paul Adom-Otchere's journalism doesn't talk about corruption. And other people's journalism talks about corruption and saves the country money. And they don't talk about Zoom Lion and he's corrupt and all that. I have a completely different view. Picking on corruption stories is good. But when you have picked one corruption story, you may have escaped 13 other corruption stories. That is why after unveiling corruption in the Fourth Republic by media houses, the corruption is still there. My view of the matter is that there has to be a systemic change. So we push agenda on the system. The constitution must change. It's unfortunate that, and I've been telling Oliver, that many young people do not see a connection between constitutional amendment and bread and butter. They actually don't care. They think constitutional amendment is lawyers' conversation. No, but that is what will bring the bread and butter. That's why I don't focus on corruption, because you can catch one corruption and you won't catch 20 of it. So it's going on. So by the time you catch, Transparency International will still come and tell you that Ghana is corrupt. But you caught Zoom Lion, you caught RLG, you caught somebody. But because the political system has not been changed, you will catch one and 20 will go through. So the important thing is to have a major constitutional amendment that makes corruption more difficult, that makes leadership more accountable. So that if you have a prime ministerial system and there was JIDA and all of those things, the prime minister will be in the parliament and you ask him, Mr. Prime Minister, what do you know about Zoom Lion's contract? Now there's a conversation about President Mahama says that he will not renew the Zoom Lion contract. 3-4 days after we studied it, we found out that nothing really has changed. Do you know why nothing has changed? Because the so-called contract was already expired. This is not the first time that Zoom Lion has been in that situation. In 2018, his contract expired. The government decided not to renew it. But once you go for tender and he participates in the tender, it's going to be very difficult to find another company in sanitation in Ghana to defeat that company in a tender process. And that's what we found out 3-4 days later when the company started issuing press statements that we are going to participate in the next tender for YEA because the company has been made so strong that it's going to be difficult to change it. So it's a pyrrhic victory that you win by saying don't renew the contract. Yeah, don't renew the contract is fine. Pay workers well. We all believe in that. But whether that company is qualified and competent to run the contract will be determined by the tender. And it's very likely that because we have not built other sanitation conglomerates, it's very likely that they win. But when you have a political system that has been completely cleaned up and accountability is real, it's more difficult for corruption to fester than catching one corruption and making a hero of the journalist or making a hero of the media house. I don't subscribe to that.
But I mean, if the person does a good job, they shouldn't be celebrated for it. Especially, the duration they've had to pursue.
I agree with that. But pursuing that without solving the problem is what has brought us where we are. So you have a hero who gets international awards. The problem in Ghana has not been solved. Anas did a great job with number 12. Football collapsed after that. Anas is a hero, but your football is collapsed. Could the matter have been handled another way to sustain your football? Perhaps. Black Stars are heading for World Cup next time. We are going to cough billions and billions from Parliament. The money that should build school is going to pay for Black Stars football because your football has collapsed. Your digital migration doesn't work. You can't raise money for the Black Stars. But Anas is a hero because he uncovered number 12. And a lot of these investigations, as I know because of where I sit, it's not so much the ingenuity of the journalist. It's somebody told him. That's mostly what happens. I go to a tender, I don't win. I call Paul Adom-Otchere, come. You see the tender, I didn't win. They gave it to the guy because he's friends with the minister. Come and let me give you the documents. And that's what happens. Because in the scheme of things, the journalist doesn't have the capacity to find those documents. Now, Akufo-Addo has given us right to information, so you may. But until right to information, you can't find it. And their information is always from the one who lost the tender. Sometimes the one who lost the tender lost it genuinely. Sometimes 3 people, quote and unquote, corrupt go into a deal. One is cheated out of the corrupt deal. He calls the Paul Adom-Otchere of this world and says, come. These guys have stolen money from Ministry of Health. Go and unearth it. His motivation to do that is because he was cheated. So that's why it doesn't go anywhere. So if you find these wild corruption allegations that comes out, it's often a whistleblower who was himself part of the fraud and was excluded. And then he gives you the information and you publish and you become a hero and blah, 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 blah. So it is good. We must continue with investigative journalism. It's an important branch of journalism. But the more important one for a developing country is to fix the system and make sure that the system has accountability. Accountability is everything in democracy. If we don't have accountability from minister, deputy minister, president, vice president, we're going nowhere. Those democracies have accountability. Like I've said, Trump has done 100 interviews since every decision that Trump has taken has been presented to journalists to question it. And they've questioned it. And they've asked him, Mr. President, he takes questions from CNN. And he knows who CNN is. Yeah. And he takes their questions and he tells them what he has to tell them. The American people will decide whether he's a good president or a bad president. But at least accountability is available.
Great. Paul, back to your book. I really love your book because, of course, you take time to talk about all the presidents, how they shape democracy in their way. Of course, 77 stories. One of the presidents that some people felt that you had given so much praise was Akufo-Addo. I mean, you called him the most impactful politician, and especially when, just 2024, even the NPP brought out the report that part of the reason they felt they lost the election was partly because of Akufo-Addo. There were some issues he didn't treat head on. There were Galamsey issues, corruption issues, Cecilia Dapa, and all of those things. People felt that he could have been better. And that's why, of course, Manasseh writes a book called The President We Never Got, which is almost like a direct opposite of what you stand for. Why do you think Akufo-Addo was the most impactful politician in this era?
I think because I knew that was going to be controversial, I evidenced it with different things. So I look at the aspects of democracy. and how our democracy has been strengthened. And you will see that he was at the forefront of most of the important things that strengthened our democracy. I can pick a few of them. Internal party democracy. Until Akufo-Addo's vision, every party would go to Congress and have 2,000 people elect a leader for the party. It was Akufo-Addo who came up in 2010 and said that, look, if we don't expand this thing to polling stations and let 500,000 people decide who's the leader of the party, I'm not interested. So the NPP changed, and then the NDC followed. If you look at freedom of expression in the press, it was Akufo-Addo who championed it and said that criminal libel law is a devastating law that must be taken out. And then it was taken out. And then we have the media that we have today. If you look at ministers who were said to be vetted by one parliament and must continue because the president won, the famous case. Again, Akufo-Addo was at the forefront of it, championing that agenda to make it different. There were a few other things in the book I have to remember, but I gave about 8 instances why I made that point. In fact, I talk about mobilization, freedom of demonstration, the freedom to demonstrate. It was Akufo-Addo who championed it, and he went to court, the Supreme Court on his own, to file a case entitled the NPP versus the IGP, that people had the rights to demonstrate. And that's how demonstrations came. So if you look at the major epochal occurrences of our Fourth Republic, you would find that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was at the forefront, championing most of these things that have shaped the democracy of today. The events of 2024 were unfortunate for him. And I was just telling somebody this morning that we have to have the conversation about Akufo-Addo 4 years from now. And I'm confident that 4 years from now, people will come back, because I saw the vitriol that was poured against Kufuor in 2008. It was more massive than Akufo-Addo's. And I always cite the example of the NPP General Secretary, Fifi Kweti. I still have the video. The kinds of things he said about Kufuor in 2008, it was terrible. Today, Kufuor is celebrated because you now have the opportunity to see him out of power and to make a comparison. The kind of things Akufo-Addo achieved in terms of building blocks for the government is the best that we have had, but it's impossible to say that now. Come back in 3 years from now. I said some on television. Akufo-Addo built an organization called GIADEC that nobody cares about, but it's such an important institution in gathering our minerals, which John Mahama has inherited and appointed people to. We are talking 6 months into the government, and this morning, Joy Online is showing the Bank of Ghana intervened the dollar by putting $1 billion in. $1 billion was not made by John Mahama. Couldn't have been. It was inherited. Akufo-Addo is the only president in the Fourth Republic to have blessed us with 3 months of import cover. But nobody cares about that because the economic situation was dire. It was terrible. It was disaster. Kinky was expensive. Was that Akufo-Addo's fault? We wait and talk about it 3 years from now. Cooking oil was expensive. Transport was expensive. Petrol was expensive. Was that Akufo-Addo's fault? Let's talk about that 3 years from now. Across the world, all the governments that had elections post-COVID and post-Russia-Ukraine war lost massively. Donald Trump was defeated in 2020 by a whooping margin. He came back in 2024 to win on the back of the economic situation of the American people. That's the economic situation. Once it comes into play, nobody stands. It's like a flood. It sweeps everybody up because all of us as human beings are concerned about it. Having said that, I think that the Cecilia Dapa episode, and I said it many times, was the most important factor in the MPP's defeat because I said it to many people. When we were doing the campaign for 2016's elections, when I say we, I mean those of us who were working on Akufo-Addo's campaign for 2016, we started floating Ameri. Maybe you don't remember, but there was something called Ameri.
Yeah.
Ameri was an energy issue.
Yeah.
We started floating Ameri and alleging that the NDC has spent $250 million of corruption on Ameri. People didn't quite believe that because they couldn't relate to it. And then came a matter called bus branding, where $1 million had been paid to paint buses. People jumped onto that and everybody was angry. Why do you pay? Because everyone could relate to 1 million. The Cecilia Dapa episode meant that a minister had $1 million in her house. It is stolen, whether it's stolen money or it's not stolen money, we all believe that it's stolen money. Okay, so there are 80 ministers. So they have 80 million in their house. when we cannot afford Kenke. And ministers have 80 million. And Akufo-Addo is sitting there, he's not sacking them. And Akufo-Addo may have 200 million. And Baumia has 600 million. These people are thieves. And the opposition said, when I come to power, I will go to their houses and take the money. If I'm 25, I'm 23, I'm 28, I jump on that bandwagon. So when they say, let's go for an NDC walk, you saw the numbers of the NDC walk. Because of Cecilia Dapa's episode, 6 months into the government, the president has not said, the attorney general has done press conference upon press conference. He's not been able to mention Cecilia Dapa. She's still walking around. She goes to courts chasing her maid servants who she claims stole her money. But that is what political propaganda can do. And that is the soup in which Akufo-Addo fell. And that's why everybody says Akufo-Addo was this, that.
But what of Galamsey? He didn't treat it head on.
Good. Galamsey is the important. I saw a video this morning where the drip machines, again, drip was one of the most important catalysts of our development in the Fourth Republic, organized by Akufo-Addo. It was so good that the NDC minority in parliament claimed ownership of it. They claimed a joint ownership of it because Akufo-Addo sat down and said that, why do we have roads that are not working? Why can't the districts do it themselves? I like Akufo-Addo because if you relate to him, he's a thinking president. You go to him at midnight and he calls it, come. Where do you live? Your place. What happens here? How does the water flow? He's a thinking president. People may not believe it, but I said, let's wait for 4 years. You will believe it. He was thinking, and that's why he said, let's have this situation. I saw a video today where it said the drip machines are being used for Galamsey. NDC campaigns have been mentioned as being responsible for the Galamsey since January. Nothing has happened. Galamsey is not an issue that any president will be able to deal with. A system must deal with it. Galamsey must be unattractive to the point of death. If people don't think that if I go to Galamsey, I will die, they will do it because it is money. So you send police to guard Galamsey. Aisha One is walking in Galamsey areas with a sack of dollars in her bag. So she comes and says, police commander, arrest her. Yeah, come, catch her. Aisha, come. You are doing Galamsey. Take $10,000. Police sergeant, $10,000. That is today 100,000 cedis. He's going to reject it. He will not reject it. There's no camera there. Nobody's seeing it. He turns around. He says, oh, Bama, so your boss has already gotten his own. So take this. It's okay, madam. So you have to leave. You come back in the afternoon. Right now, it's too bad. Come back. He said, are you alone? Who are your boys? He said, oh, my couples are. They say, call them for me. He said, how are you? Aisha peso humo. Peso humo. Timon ko diana say. 5,000 for 3 people, dollars. How are you going to solve Galamsey? The police, the very police you've taken there to solve Galamsey, are going to be onlookers because they are earning 10,000. It was said in the military, because I grew up in the military, I understand that people used to covet military postings to Lebanon and other parts of the world for UN peacekeeping because they made dollars. During the Galamsey era of 2022, 23, people used to kill to be sent to Galamsey. They don't want to go to Lebanon. They want to go to Galamsey because the other officer who lives next door to him, after serving in Galamsey for 6 months, came back and bought a Mercedes E-Class. He saw it. So these are the realities of the matter that we have to deal with. So I'm not berating President Mahama. I don't think he's done anything wrong. The real issue of Galamsey is that it has to be said that you do Galamsey, you die. That's the only way. So have a robot standing on the Galamsey pit. He feels a human being. He shoots at him. Dead. Nobody will go there. But the current situation that we have, they claim that Wontumi was a Galamsey kingpin. By the time we do 2, 3, 4 years from now, you will certainly have created an NDC Galamsey kingpin. If MPP comes back and you don't change the system, you will create another MPP Galamsey kingpin. But politics was such that you were allowed, all of us were allowed, to heap all this on Akufo-Addo. And it was fair game. And that is why they came out to say that Akufo-Addo was this, was that, was that. There was not that his government was clean and there was no problem with his government. Certainly there were problems with his government. There was exclusionism among some of his key actors. They excluded a lot of people. There were difficulties about how he managed the party's internal elections. The Alan Chemartin leaving is a minus for Akufo-Addo because he was the leader and he ought to have done enough to keep Alan Chemartin in. So all of those issues are part of Akufo-Addo's problems. But a lot of the problems that were heaped on him are systemic issues that he really couldn't solve. So we didn't even have time to look at the good parts of the policy initiatives that he has generated, the thinking that he had done, leaving billions of dollars. John Mahama said that the gold reserves was, at the time he was speaking, was 10 something, and that they had added 2. Akufo-Addo had left 8 something tons of gold. How did he do that? The same Akufo-Addo who was bad, who was this, that, left billions to sustain the city. The city sustainability is not something that had been done by NDC. It had been something they had inherited and had applied the resources the right way. You have to give them credit. NDC had applied the resources the right way, but these are resources that they inherited.
Paul, guess what? I've just asked 4 questions. I have about 24 more questions, and I know that I'm certainly not exhaust them in this conversation because I have a lot more to ask. Would you mind another recording? Just so we have time to rather, because even the book, I've not scratched the surface.
I accepted the interview because it's about young people. So anytime I like to talk to young people because I like them to see what works and what doesn't work. And I like young people taking charge of our democracy, which is what I saw in 2024. So anytime you ask me to come and talk to young people, I'm happy to do it.
Oh, I'm grateful. Guys, it's Talk No the Cook Rice podcast. This is very unlike us. Normally we give you the full juice, but Paul has promised to really show up again. Just want to say thank you to everybody that consumes our content. And of course, a very big thank you to Madu Outfits for always putting me on very solid kaftans. We're super grateful. You want to subscribe to this wherever you consume it. And this is a promise. I promise we're going to get part 2 to really go deeper than we have now. Thank you so much. And Paul, I just want to say thank you for making the time. And it's an early morning coming all the way. Super grateful.
I have to also say thank you to my team. At Good Evening Ghana. I have a lot of young people who volunteer to work with me.
Yeah.
They come from University of Ghana every Tuesday and Thursday night to sit around and help me manage my text messages. And I'm very excited about them. I like to use this opportunity to say thank you to all of them. And once in a while, I visit them on campus. And I like the enthusiasm with which they just want to support a production.
That's beautiful. In the second episode, I'll ask you why you're not doing older people, but young people. Perhaps there's something, guys, thank you so much. I'll see you some other time.
Cheers.
Talk no the cook right.